Hello and welcome. I'm Alex Grodnick, and this is Moving Up, a podcast about secrets to success, struggles along the way, and life in general. Today on the pod, Nima Ghamsari, the founder and CEO of Blend, a very interesting company that's trying to digitize the mortgage process. Nima has also just had a very interesting journey, becoming a pro poker player while in college, making tons of money, but how he knew it wasn't the right path for him. You're going to like this one. Nima, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're doing this in a hallway at Money 2020, but I would like the Dr. Seuss book. I'll do it on a boat, under a bridge, whatever, because you seem like a really cool guy, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, this is the most, this is an amazing experience doing this in the middle of a hallway at a conference.
Hopefully they don't wheel like any noisy stuff past us, but I'm 100% sure they will. Whenever I do a podcast at my home, it's a certainty that
there's a train's gonna
my
go
dog's
by.
going to bark, the Ring doorbell's going to go off. It's like, so I'm sure that will happen. But let's just like get into your story. Like, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to college? Let's start at, like then.
Yeah, I was born in Iran, and I moved to the States very early. Grew up in Michigan first, and then Cincinnati, Ohio. Spent most of my childhood in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then went to Stanford for undergrad, where I studied computer science.
Okay, so which chili do you like?
I'm not a huge chili fan, but if I had to choose one, I'd choose Skyline chili. Are you a Cincinnati person?
No, but I have a friend that's from there, and I've been to the airport like so many times because like I went to a school in Pennsylvania, and like we had to land in Cincinnati every time. That Northern Kentucky airport. And I had the chili, but okay. So then you grow up there, and then
it's kind of sad that that's what people think Cincinnati is all about. Like that's what we're known for now is the chili, and not the industries of like aircraft engines with GE and Procter & Gamble and Kroger with their
Kroger,
there's some real industry that was at least really big there. But now I think you're right. It's like now the city definitely is changing. And I think there's a growing startup community there, which is really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have brands like that are in Kroger and P&G are pretty innovative companies.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then you go to Stanford. How was that like your childhood dream?
It was. I think going to Stanford is something that when I went to Stanford for their admit weekend or whenever we were looking at the schools, I went to all the campuses for all the schools, and I went to visit a bunch, whether it was Caltech in your backyard or it was Duke, or it was Harvard, or Penn, or Northwestern. But then you go to Stanford's campus. Then I went to Stanford's campus, and I had I fell in love with it the moment that I got there. It's something that's the most beautiful campus in the world. And then the people there, it's such a well-rounded group of people that made it an amazing place to be.
Okay, cool. And what'd you study there?
Computer science.
Computer science. And like, how'd you get into computer science? Were you like a kid programming growing up? Or your parents did that? Like, where did that come from?
I did. I was programming from age probably 10 or 11. I was programming in BASIC in third grade, and then growing up, I started programming in school in fifth grade, and it was something that I always just really loved. My parents hated it because, as a parent, I think that where they grew up and they were very traditional. They were thinking kids should be outside with their friends. They shouldn't be at home in front of their computer. And I understand entirely why they felt that way, but it's something that I definitely just had a passion for at a very young age, both the software side as well as the hardware side. I built a bunch of computers growing up just for fun. Back when Dell wasn't as common of a thing, it was something where like if you wanted a good computer at a low price, you had to build it.
Sure.
There was that door that you were talking about.
Yep. It's that door. That's okay. I think people appreciate authenticity. So
this is the most authentic podcast I've been
on. I'm glad I can have that designation. Okay, so you go to Stanford, CS, childhood dream, and like, what are you thinking when you're in Stanford? You're still like tinkering and programming. You're like, I'm going to do a startup. I'm going to go work for HP. You're like, I don't know. What were the thoughts?
Well, when I got to Stanford, I needed some money for room and board. Stanford is super generous for people in low to moderate income. With low to moderate income families in terms of tuition, but there's still room and board needs and things, or at least at the time there were still room and board needs. And so I needed to get a job to be able to pay for that. And I had worked at Starbucks and McDonald's in high school. And so I thought, well, I applied there's a Starbucks right off campus. I applied to go work there. And one of my friends was like, no, you should go and play online poker. And so I actually got really into online poker and was really big into professional poker for like 7 years.
Really? This was like in like the heyday of like when ESPN started putting it on and Moneymaker and all that stuff, right?
This was right after Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of poker that summer. And then all my friends, they were just obsessed with poker. And I was about to take this job at Starbucks. And my friend's like, no, you can play online in the casinos. If you can just break even, they'll pay you enough for your room and board in terms of just a small rake back, with what they called it, where the casino takes a rake, and they would give me a rake back, which is basically a refund for part of that over time that would pay for my room and board. So I started playing online poker then. It became sort of a passion of mine.
I'm sure your parents were really thrilled with that, right?
Very traditional. Let's just say they found out. I did not tell them. Very traditional parents. I think obviously they didn't understand. It is 100% over the long haul. It's a skill game, but it's hard for people on the outside to see it's anything but gambling.
Right.
And so I understood why they didn't like it, but they really did not like it.
Sure. And how'd you do?
So I started playing. And I remember this vividly, and they gave me a $25 sign-on bonus, or $20 sign-on bonus, but they just put $20 in my account. And I was like, this is awesome. I got $20 free. And so I signed, and PayPal was the same thing, by the way. They would give you $5 to create a new account. And I remember, it's just something back in the day when people giving me $5 was like a huge, huge deal. But they gave $20, and I went online, I started playing, and I had never really played before, so I didn't know the game very well. But I started playing, and within 3 days, I lost the entire $20. I was playing very low stakes, like $5 buy-in games, but I lost the $20. And I was getting ready to just call it and say, like, look, I'm not going to deposit more money. I don't have any money to really deposit. And then there was this free roll tournament that Friday for all the new players who had signed up that week. And so I was getting ready. I had called the Starbucks. I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to come back in and take the job. And I did the free roll tournament that Friday, and it was thousands of people, and there was a $3,000 prize pool. First place was $700, second place $300. I lucked my way into second place, and I got $300. And I was like, wow, now this is really important. Now I really got to take it seriously. And so I started reading a bunch of books. This book called The Psychology of Poker, another book called The Theory of Poker. Really interesting books, but I also joined these online forums, which were basically ways to collaborate and learn and get better and do retrospectives on hands that you played. And I loved that because I had this community where I could comment on other people's hands, people could comment on my hands and give me feedback, and I'd post them, and it became a really good way to learn quickly.
Yeah.
And then, long story short, within 3 months, I had made 6 figures, and over the next 7 years, had made quite a lot of money playing online poker.
That's amazing. And so you were doing this post school, this turned into way more than just a little side thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I realized is that it's something that, as long as I was probably playing, let's call it 4 to 6 hours a day online, and I was probably studying the game 6 to 8 hours a day.
So this is your life.
This was a big part of what I did in college, and frankly, I think part of it was that college was, because I had been programming for a long time, a lot of the classes that I was taking at Stanford, at least early on, were things that I already sort of had in my DNA, things that I could already do, and so I was able to sort of do really well in those classes because I had just been programming for my whole life. So yeah, it became something I spent a lot of time and energy on, and not in a way that was, I think, unhealthy. It wasn't something that I felt like I had to do it. It felt like a job. Frankly, it felt like a job that I was going to be committed to and dedicated to, and in fact, it probably taught me work. I didn't have work ethic going into Stanford, but it taught me work ethic and how the importance of working hard if I want to be able to get better and better every single day. That's
a cool story.
Thank you.
So eventually your parents find out. This turns into more than just a side thing. You're doing this a lot. So are you thinking I'm going to become a professional poker player, or I'm just going to use this and go do something else?
Well, I was a professional poker player. I think the question for me was, is this something that I commit my post-college career to? A lot of my friends, so in 2011, the government came and shut down poker in the U.S.
So then, yeah, I remember all the companies moved to Cayman Islands or something.
Cayman Islands, and all the players who wanted to play, they weren't allowed to play in the U.S. anymore. If you wanted to play online, you could not play in the U.S. You had to go to a casino. But a lot of the people that I had played with online, there was a small community. There's 10 players who played the very highest stakes in the games that we played, and Limit Hold'em, which is the game that I played primarily, mostly heads up. And those 5 or 10 players, they would move to Macau or they'd move to Canada. They'd move to other countries because this was their life. And at the time, I was thinking to myself, the problem with poker is while it was good in terms of it's a skill game, I control my own destiny in the sense that over the long haul, skill is the only thing that matters, and there's nobody else I'm dependent on. There's a lot of luck in the short term. It taught me a lot about that. But in the long run, it's just purely a skill game. But the thing that I could never really understand or feel good about was I didn't feel like I was having a positive impact, if that makes sense. I felt like I wasn't having a positive impact on society more broadly. And then I come from this world of technology where technology, I think, does really create a positive impact. You were talking about your startup, allowing people to create joint bank accounts digitally. And I think those are the kinds of advancements that will be prevalent in society in 5, 10, 20 years. And the question is, do I want to be part of those advancements in society, or do I want to make a lot of money?
Right.
And I think the thing that I ultimately chose was make a lot less money and go be part of the positive advancements. And of course, in the long run, these things happen to work out where if you create a lot of advancement and value in society, there's a natural monetization to that over time as well. And so these things tend to work out if I focus on the value creation aspects, which is what I decided to do. So I joined Palantir right after college. And when they shut down poker online, I just cold turkey quit, and I haven't really played at all in 8 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, good for you. That's interesting. So even in Vegas, you're not like thinking, oh, I get sucked back into this old world.
Well, think about it. If you were working on something 14 hours a day,
sure.
it really became a job.
Growing up, I loved washing my car, my parents' cars, and I started a car wash in my town, and I grew into we were washing cars at all the golf courses, and I loved it in the beginning, and I haven't washed a car since because I hate washing cars now.
Yeah, it's taken it and made it, instead of an activity, it's made it sort of a chore.
Okay, so what does Palantir hire you to do?
I was brought on as, the title at the time was called Business Development Engineer. So I had an engineering background, but I was going to focus as part of the business. We were trying to get into financial services. And they were trying to figure out what's the best way to enter into financial services. And so I was one of the early people, which involved a lot of prototyping, a lot of building V0s of things, and then going out in the field and talking to customers about it. And then right then the financial crisis hit.
Right.
And so I had actually just graduated. My sister was at Citibank.
You graduated 07?
Oh wait.
Okay, I graduated 09.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And so my sister was at Citibank, and she, just before all the crisis stuff hit, she was originally thinking I should come to Citi, and I think she probably saw something coming, and she was like, actually, you should probably go into tech. And I was like, and my other friends were like, yeah, if you ever want to build something great, don't go into finance. Not to say like everybody here is in finance, but just don't go into finance if you want to build stuff, because it's just hard and you get stuck in this vortex where you're making too much money. Again, similar thing.
Similar thing.
And then you can never get out of it.
Right.
And so I decided to stay in the Bay Area, joined Palantir right before the crisis, and then the crisis hit. And from there, the rest is history.
Right. What do you mean the rest is history?
Well, I guess what I was saying is like I've obviously stayed in Silicon Valley. I stayed at Palantir for 4 years. Mm-hmm. We built a big effort to help post-crisis some of the biggest mortgage books in the world, which got me an understanding of the mortgage world, which ultimately is what led us to start Blend. But obviously, I've stayed in Silicon Valley now for 11 years.
Right. So you worked. So how long were you at Palantir for? 4 years?
I was at Palantir for 4 years.
So that's your first job, and then you're seeing this mortgage process, and then something inside of you is like, I want to do my own, I have this entrepreneurial fire, and I see this problem.
I think when I see a problem of that magnitude, where there's trillions of dollars in these portfolios, and a lot of it was paper, and it was very opaque, it was very difficult for consumers to be able to understand the process of, in this case, modifying a loan or going through a short sale if that was needed post-crisis, where they could no longer afford to make the payments. It opened up my eyes to just the sheer amount of opportunities there was if we could marry this antiquated process with modern digital technology. When I thought to myself, well, why is nobody doing this? It seems such a big industry. It seems like something that would be ripe for disruption, and the internet's been around for a long time, and digital has been around for a long time. And I think part of the reality was that nobody who's left college understood financial services, and fintech wasn't a word yet. So it wasn't cool to go and work in these spaces. Mm-hmm. It wasn't cool to go work and build software that was going to power financial services. And so I just think nobody had thought to do it. In a weird way, it doesn't seem like a really big innovation, digitizing this mortgage process, in the sense that digital technologies existed for a long time. But I think there has to be a unique combination of skills around technology, and combining that with understanding of an industry, or learning, an ability and a willingness to learn about an industry that I was in a position, and I was like, man, maybe I'm the only technologist who's one of the only technologists who has this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, who sees this problem, and so I really have to do something about it.
Yeah, well, that's powerful. I mean, that's how a truly great value-added business is built. You actually live, see the problem, breathe it yourself, and then you go set out to remedy it. And so, tell us about the problem that you're solving. I mean, I'm sure lots of people on this podcast have got mortgages, gone through it, seen it. I mean, I don't know if they worked in it, but I'm refinancing my mortgage right now. I mean, I think it's taking 4 months to do this. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think what the simplest version of our product is, it used to be that to apply for a mortgage, you tell somebody a bunch of information via some sort of form, some sort of application form that would include, here's how much money I make, here's how much money I have in my bank accounts, here's my my credit history, here's my other houses I own, whatever it is, all this information. You fill that out, spend a few hours filling that out, and then the next day or 2 days later, the bank asks you for a bunch of documents. And then, over the next few days or weeks, somebody reads through all those documents internally and comes back to you with additional questions. And then they go and they'll verify some of the things that you said with the employer that you said you got your income from, or the credit bureaus that obviously have your credit history, or your banks that you said you have your assets with. And so that process is a several week up to several month process. And it was built around this concept of, it was built with the assumption that the data that's required to make these credit decisions was not available. And it wasn't, right? Like, income data used to be things that were locked up in old school mainframes.
Right.
And nowadays we can verify income in 2.5 seconds. Like, we are faster even. We can verify income instantly. And we can verify assets with direct bank connections, all these aggregators that are out there. And so in a world where all the consumer data is becoming available to consumers to use for their financial betterment, then the entire process of getting a mortgage should be flipped on its head, where all those verifications, all the things that I mentioned that are required to verify with your employer or bank or whatever, those happen up front. And instead of you filling out a form asking the bank what it can do for you, the bank tells you what it can do for you instantly.
Right.
And so we flip the process that we're a digital provider, where we're a white labeled software provider that we work with banks of all sizes, credit unions of all sizes, home builders of all sizes. We work with a lot of the fintechs who are getting into mortgage and other credit spaces, offering the white label solution that will allow for this process to be a data-driven process instead of a document-driven process.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And when you started it, did you start off thinking, we're going to go to banks and have them become our customers, or do you think we'll roll this out ourselves and be consumer-facing?
It was a point of controversy. I think a lot of people at the time, in 2012 when we started the companies that had been successful in the fintech space were SoFi, Lending Club. A lot of the companies that later became household names, went public, became very successful in their own right, but they went into these spaces that were not yet controlled and not yet really centralized with a small number, like 50 or 100 banks. And so what that meant was they were able to become successful, and that we had a lot of pressure on us by our investors to say, you should go direct to consumer. I felt then, and I still feel to this day, that the missing piece in this industry is not consumer acquisition or customer acquisition. The missing piece in this industry is the technology infrastructure that can do these products in one tap. Like, if I can do these products in one tap and I can make that technology available, then I can really help millions of consumers instead of hundreds or thousands of consumers. And that was and going back to what I said earlier about focusing on impact, when I left poker, I was like, I want to focus on impact. And I still have that same exact feeling today. If I can do something that can affect positively millions of consumers in the same time frame as it would have otherwise taken me to do thousands of consumers or tens of thousands, then I'll do the one that takes millions every single time.
Right.
Now, of course, there are differences in the economics when we're not going direct to consumer, and there's differences in the amount of control we have, but that was a trade-off that we were willing to make given the amount of impact that we would be able to have as a result.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I met with a small bank, a regional bank yesterday, and they said we have so much demand for mortgages. Deposits are our bearing factor. We don't have enough deposits to be able to do all these mortgages. So it's like, you're right. There's just so much demand for this. It's about improving the process, not about the acquisition of customers.
Right.
Very interesting. Okay, so I love the product. I love the idea. Who do you start it with? Like, how do the early days go?
Well, the early days were definitely a grind. Actually, every day is sort of a grind when in financial services. And I'll just as a sidebar, financial services is a heavily regulated space with a lot of really big and really methodical institutions. Not just on the banking side, but think about the credit bureau. Like, everything is very big and very methodical. And in some ways, it's frustrating for people. I think of it as sort of something that is a space that we're working with a lot of people's entire life savings, or their entire money. If they're going to put a down payment on a house, we have to make sure we get it right. There's a lot that goes into financial services that, when we do it right, though, and if we do it at scale, even if it takes a little bit longer, it will be so positive for society that it's worth it. It's worth the frustration. It's worth the methodical aspect and methodical nature of the industry. And so I'm certainly, I think I'm just more telling the anecdotes. It's like, it was very interesting early days where when we would go and we'd pitch people this concept of, we're going to make a mortgage so easy that you can apply for a mortgage on your mobile device in seconds, they would say, why would anybody apply for a mortgage on their mobile device? And I get it. Nobody had applied for a mortgage on their mobile device until 2014 or 15. And so I understand why they didn't think it was necessary. And yes, it is a really big life decision. But then on the flip side, a lot of people are growing up as mobile digital natives, and a lot of low to moderate income communities, mobile devices are now the primary device in a household.
Right.
And so there's no other way to apply without going to the library or somewhere else that there's computers available for them to use. And so people didn't really see it. It was a grind. It took us a few years to get our first couple customers. And as soon as that really started to happen and people saw what was possible and people saw that digital was becoming more and more important, in around 2014, 2015, it was like everyone, all of a sudden it clicked. And people were like, yeah, we do need to be digital and we do need to be mobile, even if it's a really big transaction, because consumers are seeing and feeling mobile and digital experiences in the rest of their life. And they're feeling low friction experiences. They're feeling one tap experiences in the rest of their life. And if we don't do this, somebody else will.
Sure. And
that became something that we use as a cornerstone for our business.
That's fantastic. I really like the idea of it. So so who are your customers today? Like a lot of the big banks?
Yeah, we work with some of the biggest banks. We work with some of the biggest credit unions. We work with some of the biggest home builders. We work with some of the biggest fintechs. But we also work with small community banks. We work with regional banks. We work with small credit unions. We work with our independent mortgage banks. We work with companies of all sizes and shapes in this spectrum. And I really think about Blend as sort of a digital infrastructure, digital financial infrastructure for this industry, where we can connect a lot of the pieces, because the transaction is very complex and has a lot of pieces. We can connect a lot of the pieces for consumers and for lenders. We can bring it together in a meaningfully simpler way than it used to be. And we can do it across the entire industry in a way that everyone sort of benefits, and we raise the bar, we raise the watermark for what good service looks like in this industry.
Right. Yeah.
We do, just for numbers wise, we do about almost $2.5 to $3 billion a day in mortgage applications going through our system. And so we have significant volume going through our system, and that makes it a megaphone for us to be able to go and say, okay, well, if we make an improvement to this, it can affect millions of consumers over the next year.
And is that 2.5 to 3 million? Is that a big piece of the market, a small piece of the market?
2.5 to 3 billion is probably somewhere around a fifth of the mortgage applications today. So it's a significant chunk of the market. I don't know the exact numbers. I wish I had the exact numbers. Somewhere between a tenth and a fifth of the market.
Sure, interesting. So, so where do you go from here? Is it continuing to evangelize the company and get more and more of that pie, or is it other products? Is it other lines? Is it other credit? Like, I mean, the mortgage business is pretty big. So,
making the mortgage as simple as possible is very important to me and to us as a company. I think we can make every mortgage feel like a modern digital consumer grade experience. It'll take some time. There's still a long way to go. I mentioned this industry is methodical. Everything takes a lot of investment. It's not just serving consumers either. There's all these banks have, a ton of internal team members who, if they're still using antiquated tools, then we've failed them as well, because they're there to serve the consumer. And if they're using old school things that don't allow them to serve the consumer in the way that they would be in a self-serve way, where we know for a fact that some decently large percentage of consumers don't want to do this self-serve. I mentioned that a lot want to do it on a mobile device, but a lot also don't want to do it on a mobile device. A lot want to do it with a person. And we should allow that. We should enable that. We shouldn't, for really big transactions, be forcing the consumer's behavior towards what we think is best for the lenders or for the ecosystem. We should allow consumers to engage with the institutions how they want to. And so the short answer to your question is there's a lot of opportunity to continue to make the mortgage process simpler. So that's a big focus of ours. That's the primary focus. Second, we're taking the same technology to the other products. So a lot of the verifications, a lot of real-time understanding of a consumer's credit capacity is something that we've become very, very good at in the mortgage process. And so our goal is now to take that and allow for a bank or a credit union or a financial institution of any kind to offer an entire suite of products to the consumer using the same information, the same kinds of system that we have in place today. So if we know how to get your income, we know how to get your credit, and we know how to get your assets, we can show you what you're approved for across the entire bank instantly.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. And then the third thing is each of these transactions is very complex, the real estate one being the biggest one, the home buying one being the biggest one. So how do we bring together the ecosystem around buying a home? We launched our home insurance
agency last year, and we've continued to build out other components of the ecosystem so that as there's digital innovation in those spaces, that the consumer can get the benefit from it and from the scale that we're getting with our customers.
Right. Well, that's very cool. Nima, I'll let this be the last question. It's usually around advice. If someone is early in their career, maybe they're still at Stanford, they're working in their first job at Palantir, and they're trying to figure out their place in the world. They haven't found their passion, their path, whatever it is. What do you tell someone like that?
Well, if they haven't found their passion, I mean, I'm a pretty patient person. I think I have some belief that people should be incredibly patient when they need to, and then incredibly impatient when opportunity arises. And so I'd say be patient with, I had a couple other things that I thought about doing in between when I graduated from Stanford and when I ultimately started Blend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I didn't. And I'm glad I found something that I could have a really meaningful impact at very large scale. But as soon as I saw the opportunity and I felt like it was one that I could be the one to meaningfully impact, I remember my last day of Palantir was the day before we started the company. It wasn't like I went and took, a month to go decompress. And granted, we were working. Palantir is a great company, and I was working very, very hard. A lot of all-nighters. There's a lot of work to build the things that we built there. But then, as soon as this opportunity came, I was incredibly impatient. And so I think there's no rush. Play the very long game in the grand scheme of things. But when opportunities arise, take them.
Sure.
It's not. We're fortunate to live in a world right now where there's a lot of capital to be deployed. There's a lot of transformation that's happening, and tech is the driver of a lot of that transformation. And so if we're able to be the ones that can solve some of those things, we'll look back in 50 years and be like, wow, that was really cool to be a part of that time in history, because in 50 years, the world will not be needing this transformation. It will already have happened.
Sure. Okay. Well, Nima, thanks so much. This was great. Sorry, it's a little noisy, but we'll wrap up before this next wave of people walk through here. But really, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for listening today. If you like moving up, the best way you can support us is by telling your friends. Thanks.